right, we're gonna get started with doing the seams around the leg holes. I'm gonna line up these two seams here, the blue and white and the yellow and white. I'm gonna take my glue. I'm not gonna push very hard. So actually, this needle has been used before, and I had left it out. Usually what you can do is pull the tip to get the old dried glue out. There we go. Now, I'm gonna also get a paper towel that I can lay this on each time, because it'll tend to kind of keep coming out a little bit, and I don't want to make a big mess, so I'm going to put a paper towel down. So I'm going to get this set up to where I have about 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to put about 1 inch worth of glue, kind of half on one side of this seam, half on the other side. It takes a little bit more glue if you have a bump like there. That factory seam's kind of got a little bit of a bump. And then I'm going to put some over here on this part. Go slow and do this part right, because it'll make it a whole lot easier later on when you're gluing the strips over this. So I'm going to carefully kind of flip this up without letting it move. And then I'm going to push down. Now, I don't want this excess material here, this little 1/8 inch piece, to skew one direction. I want to make sure that, like, I kind of want to check it and make sure as I continue to go, it's gonna give me the 1/8 inch. You don't want it to be skew. You want to make sure that as you go, it's not kind of trying to skew one direction, because then you can definitely end up with a wrinkle. Now, you have time. You can peel this back if you need to. I can kind of show you that. See, if I need to kind of work with it, and then I could even put it back down, as long as it's still got some tack to it. You can also kind of work with it. If you got like a wrinkle or a bubble or something, you can kind of just work with it. You know, it's still wet for a period of time. Really, for the first minute or so, you can really slide the material against itself with the glue in between. After about a minute, it's going to start getting kind of set a little bit. You could still peel it apart. In fact, if you needed to, you could take and put a little bit of acetone. I can show you this. I got a little bit of acetone on this Q-tip, and if you kind of put this under here, see how easy it releases? And in fact, it'll kind of reactivate that glue. So I could just kind of push that back down. And I'm using this to kind of roll it and put some good pressure on it. Especially right here where this bump is, where this factory seam is. You really want to make sure that gets pushed down. So now we're going to continue to go. I'm going to probably go this direction, because it's easier for me to kind of work from this side. It's definitely all about making sure that you have a good ergonomic setup for working on your seam. Make sure that it's, you know, you've got this situated in a way that's easy to work with. So as I continue on, I've got a little bit of glue there, and it's still wet, so I'll probably just kind of let that, kind of drag that across. You want enough glue, but you don't want to just be super sloppy with it either, because it's going to give you a lot more work later on having to clean it up. It will clean up with some acetone, but it's generally a lot easier to just avoid having a whole lot of excess glue. So it's kind of about finding that right amount of glue where it's enough to give you a good bond, but it's not so much that it's just sloppy. So this is really where you're going to be developing your technique. Take time. Don't do this if you're rushed. So you see how I'm kind of pulling, and then there's a little bit of a wrinkle there, and I can kind of push down. I can even kind of wiggle it a little bit, and that'll kind of slide the material and kind of try to situate it so that it'll take up that slack on that wrinkle. So don't do this when you're upset or stressed or tired, because it really, your mental state really affects your quality of work. So you really want to be in a good mood and, you know, wide awake and not stressed when you do this. Otherwise, it's going to be an exercise in frustration. So definitely, if you start getting frustrated, just walk away, take a break, come back to it later. What I always do too is I pull it back to where past where I glued. So I don't want to have a gap in my glue. And the only way to really guarantee that I don't have a gap is to peel it back even in past where I had already glued. Like, you know, if I glued to here, before I start gluing this way, I'll peel it back just a little bit, maybe 1/8 of an inch, just so I can see that is a spot that was already glued. That guarantees that I don't have a gap, because if you have a gap, then that's going to be a leak. So you don't really want that. All right, so as I'm doing this, what I also want to do is kind of come inside here. I'm going to put my hand in there, and I want to try to fix this little pinched piece. I'm not going to pull very hard. I'm just going to kind of work my finger back behind it. I want it to be able to sit flat like that. So the glue takes really a good 30 minutes before it is fairly set up. Honestly, it takes like 24 hours before it's like 100% set up. But you know, when you get to about 30 minutes, it's probably like halfway there. You get to an hour, it's probably like 80-90% of the way there. So for the first half hour, you can keep coming back, and you can keep rolling this to help make sure that it's a good bond. So I'm going to continue working my way around. One of the things that I want to be mindful of is right here, I want these two to line up. So once I get to this point, I want to make sure that I don't have too much material on one side, and if it's, you know, off one way or another, then that's not a good sign. So what you can do is, as you're getting closer to this, if you notice that it's going to try to be, if it's going to go off one way or another, you can kind of stretch it across the jar. And what that'll do is if you can get them lined up, and then you can kind of pull it tight and then work with it kind of pulled tight, what that does is it'll stretch whichever layer is slightly shorter and to make them line up. That works to some degree. If it's way off, then there's going to be some other problems, and there's ways to mitigate that. hopefully you've cut the hole sizes the same. If you know, as long as you did mark them the same size, and then you cut them out, you know, roughly about the same, then you shouldn't have too much problem. So I'm just going to keep on working my way around, and we'll see where I'm at here in a few minutes.